Not suitable for work. What is the worst thing you've ever seen or heard in a game of truth or dare? When I was 15, a girl I was trying to date invited my friend and me over to a house where she was babysitting. When we arrived, she was there with 4 of her girlfriends, including her one extremely slutty and rumored STI-wielding friend. After drinking everything in the house she thought the parents wouldn't miss, we played truth or dare. Eventually, the girl I liked dared me to go have sex in the master bedroom with the slut. I passed and took truth, but my friend took the dare and went off with her. They came back out about 5 minutes later, and no one believed they had done anything. 9 months after that, everybody believed them. Now that's a story to tell their grandkids. One of the popular girls in my high school admitted to regularly pooping in her hand. She took truth and was asked to tell an embarrassing secret or something like that. She said that she was always embarrassed whenever there was a splashing sound in the toilet when she went to poop, so she'd always poop in her hand and then slide it quietly into the water. She went from being a popular girl to being the hand poop girl pretty quick. I watched my friend take a shit in the park. Then we threw rocks at it. I miss being a teenager. My friends and I loved this game in high school. One day I came up with the best dare. You had to be blindfolded, and someone would kiss you and you'd have to guess who it was. Well, eventually everyone just wanted to play that game, so we did for a few rounds. There were like 8 or 9 of us, so one person would be blindfolded, and everyone would vote on who had to kiss them. It was always a good mix of genders, guy guy, guy girl, girl girl. Veiled. It got boring eventually because everyone was just doing a light peck on the lips. So we invented round 2. Round 2, you had to kiss them for 3 seconds and actually move your lips a little bit. Like a real kiss. Round 3, you had to make out with them for 5 to 7 seconds. Round 4, you had to use your hands and touch their face and shoulders. On particularly wild nights we would get to round 5, where you would have to actually straddle the person and make out furiously with them for 10 seconds. It was a great game though, and to be honest it taught me how to make out properly because at the end we rated everyone's kissing. Round 26, ensure child support payments are successfully processed. When asked to present a deep secret about themselves, one of the really hot girls, this was high school, straight up admitted to using whipped cream to get her cat, aren't their challenges like sandpaper? To lick her. The awkwardness escalated exponentially like a nuke in the room, seeping into the very core of every living being present. I got dared to use a zip line that nobody had likely touched in decades. So we climbed up a mountain while wasted in the middle of the night, found that my friend was not bullshitting and that it actually did exist, used our zip on it, and sailed over a 1,500 feet drop. And then the thought occurred to me that I had no way of getting back, and I had not even brought a flashlight with me, and had absolutely no knowledge of part of the mountain I was on. So I basically stood in place for 7 hours or so. I don't know if that was the worst, but it was definitely the most stupid. Especially considering that the whole point of the game was to get with some girls who were no longer in a partying mood after I disappeared into the night. Genius move by your friend. The best truth I have heard came about 6 years ago. A girl walked in on her parents having sex with another couple. At age 18, while at a friend's house digging around looking for a lighter, he finds an adult toy in his, single, dad's room. It was one of those hot pink, sparkly, dildos with the rabbit thing on it. Something that didn't really seem like a guy toy, and it was in the spare nightstand, so we assumed maybe an old girlfriend or something. Fast forward a few weeks later, his dad is out of town, there are a few of us over playing truth or dare and I dare him to do something to his dad's dildo. At first, his face turned 10 shades of red embarrassed in front of everyone else, but then he manned up, grabbed it with a Ziploc bag worn like a glove. Then rubbed some cut open habanero peppers all over it. This was a Friday night and his dad was supposed to be back Saturday. Saturday night rolls around and he, our other friend, and myself are all at his house, quietly, as the one sneaking in and I had been drinking. This was roughly 8-ish. As the other friend and I stood in the driveway, we hear the most god-awful, blood-curdling scream. The type of scream that sounds like someone being murdered. We dash in just in time to meet our friend in the hallway as he flies into his dad's room. His mom, dad's ex-wife, is in the floor butt naked, curled up in a ball screaming her head off. Apparently his mom and dad had been screwing around behind the family's back. A hospital trip followed, and after spending the night in the ER, not knowing WTF happened, they ended up coming out in the open, getting back together, and then remarried. That was 12 years ago and they are still together. For their wedding present, I gave them a jar of habaneros that they still don't understand to this day. I wasn't participating, but there was one weird night when one of my daughters had a bunch of friends over. My wife and I were sitting downstairs while they were up in her room apparently playing truth or dare. Over the course of a couple hours, we experienced some pretty weird stuff. Two of my daughter's friends came running downstairs and started twerking before running off again. My daughter came down and said, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant because I'm a whore." Later we heard a splash outside by the pool, and a minute later a couple girls come running into the house wrapped in towels and dripping wet. I had to go tell them to not jump out the window anymore, and that pretty much stopped the shenanigans. When I was 17 I worked as a summer camp counselor. The week of our orientation, before the campers arrived, all of the counselors were down by the lake when we started the game of truth or dare. Everybody was pretty normal except for this quiet girl that was a Disney freak. Everything Disney, pajamas, sleeping bag, hair ties, t-shirts. All Disney, all the time. Being 17 years old up in the woods, our truths and dares turned sexual pretty quickly. After finishing my dare I turned to her and asked, "Truth or dare?" "Truth," was the reply. "Okay, have you ever had sex?" I asked. "Yes, but only with one person. My father. It started when I was 12. Game. Fricking. Over. Edit, for the people asking for a follow-up, many of the female counselors and naturalists spoke with her that night and the next morning. Her father had been jailed a few years prior to her telling us. One dare was to bake cookies whilst nude, but then we were out of sugar, so a follow-up dare required a second person going to the neighbor's door in underwear to ask for a cup of sugar. It worked and the cookies were delicious. Grad student neighbors didn't even bat an eye. I once gave a friend 2 dares in a row. I dared him to drink 6 cups of water. Then I dared him to not move from the couch for the rest of the game. A girl at a party I once went to got dared to sit on a small lava lamp. As in, sit on it if you get what I mean. Anyway, this thing was on, and hot. Poor girl sat for 2 seconds and jumped right back up. Turned out she gave herself burns on the inside of her lady parts. A friend of mine back in high school was asked where the weirdest place he had ever masturbated was. His answer was a train, which really isn't too weird, still pretty weird, but he then, for whatever reason, didn't stop there. And told us where he put the mess. Afterwards, when then train staff came through, he fricking ate it. Again. He just told that last part without anyone even asking. It wasn't really a dare, but a drunken friend said he'd show us how much of a man he was. In quick succession, he chugged about 250 milliliters of Jack Daniels, snorted a line of salt and poured vinegar into one eye, and squeezed a lemon in the other. Everybody laughed at him because he had to run to the bathroom crying to wash his eyes. I think he was trying to do a cowboy shot. Except our version is you take a shot, snort a line of salt, get punched in the face, then squeeze a lemon into your eye. When I was about 15 years old, my high school soccer team had a co-ed, girls-guys team, spaghetti dinner that turned into a co-ed sleepover. Maybe about 6 guys and 5 girls. We ended up taking a bottle of really cheap Mr. Boston vodka from this kid's parents, and all of us began drinking much faster than 15-year-olds should. I was beginning to feel pretty nauseous but was determined to stay in the game of truth or dare that we had started. I was then dared to kiss the bare-ass cheek of one of the more crude chicks on the girls' team. As I pressed my lips to her cheek, she thought it would be hilarious to grab the back of my head and rip ass right in my face. The heat and smell were too much for my stomach to bear, and as I pulled away I barfed all over her back and ass. Just a regular dare. My friends and I got one of our friends to drink month-old bong water. Looked like black sludge water that smelled terrible. Told him it would get him real high. More of a trick than a dare, I guess. He did it and hurled instantly. People puking black liquids out is pretty fricked up to see. When I was 16 I played truth or dare whilst really drunk. Bad mistake. I got asked what the most humiliating thing I've ever done was. Well, drunk me thought telling people about the time I had a whack and managed to unload so hard I covered my own face was a good idea. Never lived it down. During my time in the Navy, I ended up at a party with a group of maybe 10 people. It was a mixed group of males and females, also Navy personnel and civilians. After a few hours of normal party hanging out, the game started. It went downhill fast, and ended with a co-ed naked wrestling tournament. One of my mates said he had his pee-pee pierced and nobody believed him, as he'd sometimes exaggerate make-up stories. To prove it, he put a straw through the piercing, and then another of my mates was dared to drink his drink through the pee-pee straw. It was hilarious, and weird. And both parties regretted it immediately. Warning, sad, we were teens, high on hormones. I dared Mick to put his pet gerbils down his boxers. He did cause he had a crush on me. One of them died of fright, the pregnant female one. It still haunts me. If I could change one thing in my life, it would be that. One time I was dared to kiss this girl and I passed because I was in a long-going relationship with a girl I really love, 3 years, and so I did this instead. I poured really hard rum on my hand and lit it. I had to keep it lit for as long as I could. Once it got too hot to handle, I had to put it out. Part of the dare though was to put it out with the watermelon next to us. So I proceeded to punch it open with my flaming fist and stick my hand in it for 3 long annoying sticky hours. Classmates were playing Truth or Dare. A girl got dared to lick the inside of a guy's belly button. It was both hilarious and revolting. I was dared to hump this big tree in the front yard. Not that bad. The problem was that I was wearing short shorts and I ran to the tree and jumped as high as I could. I started humping, but while doing that I slid down the tree with my bare legs. Both of my thighs were severely scraped up. My friends and I dared a kid to snort a bit of very hot sauce. He snorted it like a champ, then spent the rest of the night with blood pouring from his face. 7th grade. What were we thinking? Technically this is totally the best, but my boyfriend was dared to swap underwear with me for a good half hour. I was wearing a thong. Buddy with a stun gun for dared to let his girlfriend zap him that same night. It was a good night. I know this is a little late, but in a drinking game version of Truth or Dare in university, I got my buddy to place our other friends, who was of a Middle Eastern culture that didn't allow trimming of hair, whole beard inside of his mouth for 5 or 10 seconds. I still laugh and shudder simultaneously when I think about it. After my next dare made a huge mess of the apartment, 2 scoops of Raisin Bran down Scott's pants for the remainder of the game, I wasn't allowed to play their drinking game anymore. Good times. Not Truth or Dare, but never have I ever. We were playing any. My friend's husband was there. We are all in college, and after losing every round he was very irritated. He's also in the army and has served 3 tours in Iraq. Well, we are all pretty drunk at this point, so my friend can't think of anything he hasn't done and says, "Never have I ever killed someone." This guy jumps up, screams, "God damn it, how do I keep losing?" and walks away. His wife was like, "Hey honey, it's because you have the most interesting life." TLDR, guy admits that he had killed people. Do you have a story? Share it with us in the comment section.